Before we get started, let's go over a few things to actually make this long video manageable. If you're looking for the whole experience or to see what is different in each of the core rulebooks, then feel free to watch this video from start to finish. If you're looking for a specific section, then feel free to use the timestamps in the description. I will go over a brief introduction to all three of the core rulebooks, then I will delve into character creation, then gameplay, or how to play the game, as well as some different aspects for gameplay within each of those, and then the different aspects that make up the gameplay. Then we'll take a look at the differences between the adversaries and the ships and all of that before we go over my final thoughts. There will be differences between the three core rulebooks, mainly the introduction, some aspects of character creation, and the presentation of the adversaries and the ships. I will present the information in the following order: Edge of the Empire, Age of Rebellion, and then Force and Destiny. Basically the order that these core rulebooks came out. Once again, if you're looking for more information on a specific rulebook or a specific topic, such as character creation, then feel free to use the timestamps down below in the description to skip around. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the introduction to Edge of the Empire. The Edge of the Empire core rulebook is all about outcasts, whether you are a bounty hunter, a smuggler, or some sort of other scoundrel. In this game, you're most likely to owe someone something, and you're working to pay off that debt. In Age of Rebellion, you're a rebel now, Harry. You can play as a soldier, a commander, spy, or even a pilot. Your duty to the rebellion is what drives your character. In Force and Destiny, you play as a Force-sensitive character who may or may not be a Jedi. Hiding your gifts and what you really are while maintaining your sense of morale is how you play this one. I would classify character creation in these games as being medium, maybe high medium in its complexity, mainly because you need to keep track of your experience points, which are used to upgrade skills, characteristics, and buying specializations. There's a variety of things you can spec into, so you do need to kind of plan ahead. First, you're going to determine your character concept and background. Then you're going to determine your starting obligation, your duty, or your morality, whichever game you're playing in. Then you're going to select a species, then you'll select a career, and then you'll select a specialization within that career. Then you'll invest in your experience points, and that's where things kind of get a little bit challenging or complex, where you have to actually keep track of things. Then you're going to determine your derived attributes, then you'll determine your starting motivations, then you'll choose gear and a description, and then you'll get to choose your ship or your group resource. Edge of the Empire has obligation. Obligation is the debt that a PC owes someone else, such as a HUD. There is a nice table of different obligations to choose from on page 39, but owing someone credits or being blackmailed are some of the simplest. Depending on how many PCs are in the party will determine the character's starting obligation. The GM will take the party's total obligation and create a table, making sure to divide each character and their obligation type. At the start of every session, the GM rolls a D100, and if the result is greater than the PC's obligation total, then nothing happens. Their obligation is not pressing enough to affect them, for now. If the result is equal or less than the total obligation, then you're going to compare the results with the chart your GM made to see specifically whose obligation is coming to terms. The GM should weave this into the narrative somehow. Regardless, the party strain threshold goes down by 1, while the PC whose obligation triggered is reduced by 2. Age of Rebellion has duty. Duty is a commitment to the rebellion. It could be the driving factor for why they joined, or an area of focus for which they have a particular interest. There is a list of duty types on page 47, such as combat victory, counterintelligence, intelligence, internal security, personnel, political support, recruiting, resource acquisition, sabotage, space superiority, tech procurement, or support. Depending on how many PCs are in the party will determine a character's starting duty. The GM will take the party's total duty and create a table making sure to divide each character and their duty type. At the start of every session, the GM rolls a D100, and if the result is greater than the PC's duty total, then nothing happens. They simply have not collectively achieved enough to positively affect their situation or their outlook. If the result is equal or less than the total duty score, then compare the results with the chart your GM made to see specifically whose duty is triggered. The party's wound threshold is increased by 1, with the exception of the character whose duty was triggered. Their wound threshold increases by 2 instead. Force and Destiny has morality. Morality is the measure of right and wrong. During character creation, all PCs have a morality score of 50, although you can change that to 29 or 71 with your GM's permission. With morality comes emotional strength and weaknesses. This is simply an explanation that allows the player to develop the PC's personality and temperament. The GM can choose to trigger morality by taking everyone's morality score and rolling a D100. Whoever is closest to the result will have the spotlight for that session. Morality can also increase or decrease depending on a character's actions. Do bad things and you'll earn conflict. A character can earn no more than 10 conflict in a single session. At the end of a session, each player rolls a D10. If the result is less than the amount of conflict earned during that session, they subtract the roll result from the conflict and then decrease the PC's morality by the difference. If the roll result is greater than the amount of conflict earned, they subtract their conflict from the roll result and increases their morality by that number. Next, we have the species. Each book has 8 species to choose from, but each book has your standard humans. Each species comes with their own characteristics, wound threshold, and strain threshold calculations, starting experience, and a special ability. Edge of the Empire has Bothans, droids, Gans, humans, and Rhodians, Transdoshans, Twi'lek, and Wookiee. Droids are an interesting option because you have different models that you can choose from, although they're there just for cosmetic reasons. Instead, droids get a whopping 175 starting XP to use towards increasing their characteristics, which are at a default of 1. Age of Rebellion has Bothans, droids, Duros, Grans, humans, Ithorians, Mon Calamari, and Salustans. Ithorians have a special attack at the cost of 3 strain, where they basically use their vocal cords to scream really loud. Both Bothans and droids are in the Edge of the Empire core rulebook. Force and Destiny has Syrians, humans, the Keldor, Mirialans, Nautilans, Togrutas, Twi'leks, and Zabraks. Twi'leks are also in the Edge of the Empire core rulebook. Each rulebook has 6 careers, but each career has 3 specializations. Each career gives you 8 career skills, and each specialization gives you 4 additional ones. Each specialization gives access to talents, which are active and passive abilities. None of the careers or specializations repeat across the rulebooks, but some of their functions might, such as someone who is good at melee or ranged, or a party face who's good at talking. Edge of the Empire has the Bounty Hunter career, with the Assassin, Gadgeteer, and Survivalist talent trees. The Colonist has access to the Doctor, Politico, and Scholar talent trees. The Explorer has access to the Fringer, the Scout, and the Trader talent trees. The Hired Gun has access to the Bodyguard, Marauder, and Mercenary Soldier talent trees. The Smuggler has access to the Pilot, Scoundrel, and Thief talent trees. And the Technician has access to the Mechanic, Outlaw, and Slicer talent trees. There is a universal specialization tucked away in the Force chapter called the Force Sensitive Exile. Anyone can buy a universal specialization at the cost of a normal career specialization. So it'll take 10 times the number of specializations that you have going into if it is a career specialization. If it isn't a career specialization, then it is 10 times the number that you're going to plus an additional 10 experience. With universal specializations, you do not have to pay the 10 extra experience. The Age of Rebellion has the Ace career with Driver, Gunner, and the Pilot talent trees. The Commander has access to the Commodore, Squadron Leader, and Tactician talent trees. The Diplomat has access to the Ambassador, Agitator, and Quartermaster talent trees. The Engineer has access to the Mechanic, Saboteur, and Scientist talent trees. The soldier has access to the commando, medic, and sharpshooter talent trees, and the spy career has access to the infiltrator, scout, and slicer talent trees. Age of Rebellion also has the universal specialization, the recruit. Unlike other specializations that are outside your career, universal specializations only cost 10 times the number of specializations you have, including the one you are purchasing. In addition to that, there is another universal specialization tucked away in the Force chapter called the Force Sensitive Emergent. The Force and Destiny's careers are unique in that each one has a specialization focusing in a lightsaber style. These can change the skill used when making lightsaber skill tests. The Consular has access to the Healer, Neiman Disciple, and Sage specializations. The Guardian has access to the Peacekeeper, Protector, and Soresu Defender. The Mystic has access to the Advisor, Makashi Duelist, and Seer specialization. The Seeker has access to the Ataru Striker, Hunter, and Pathfinder specializations. The Sentinel has access to the Artisan, Shadow, and Sheen Expert specializations. And the Warrior has access to the Aggressor, the Shicho Knight, and Starfighter specialization. There are no universal specializations in this core rulebook. A character's motivation helps provide flavor and distinction by helping define what makes them tick. Each rulebook has 3 motivations with 10 different options for each motivation. Motivations are completely narrative, but your GM can use them to tempt players and their characters. Edge of the Empire has access to the ambition, cause, and relationship motivations. For ambition, this can be things like friendship, love, freedom, fame, greed, status, expertise, wanderlust, and power, or even religion and spirituality. For cause, this can be things like religion and spirituality, the weak and charity, non-human rights, local politics, overthrow the empire, crime, emancipation, droid rights, capitalism, and support of the empire. And then relationships can be things like place of origin, pet, childhood friend, comrades, siblings, mentor, parents, extended family, droid companion, or even a former nemesis. The Age of Rebellion has access to the belief, connection, and quest motivations. For beliefs, we have things like the Republic, honor, the Jedi, justice, species rights, peace, religion or philosophy, freedom, progress, and crime. For connections, we have things like political, family, military, intelligence, friends, the underworld, economic, love interest, no one, or the empire. And then for quests, we have things like redemption, glory, vengeance, influence, rescue, the Jedi, freedom, the Sith, riches, and thrill. Force and Destiny has access to ambition, cause, and faith. For ambition, we have things like revenge, wealth, power, to become a Jedi, survival, glory, destroy the Sith, enlightenment, expertise, and discovery. For cause, we have things like freedom, restore the Jedi, galactic peace, justice, stop the rebellion, equality, help the helpless, free enterprise, overthrow the empire, and knowledge. And for faith, we have things like natural world, goodness of people, friends and family, the cosmic force, science and reason, the Jedi Code, imperial rule, the rebellion, religious code, or nothing. Last is the group resource. Because each rulebook plays with different themes in the Star Wars universe, each book will have access to different resources. With Edge of the Empire, you and your fellow players will be choosing a starting ship. You have 3 to choose from unless your GM is kind enough to give you any ship that costs no more than 120,000 credits. The 3 to choose from are the Wayfarer Medium Transport, the YT-1300 Light Fighter, aka the Millennium Falcon ship, or the Fire Spray System Patrol Craft, aka Boba Fett ship. With Age of Rebellion, you and your fellow players will choose a Rebellion resource. You can choose either the Commandeer Lambda class shuttle, a Y-Wing squadron, or a base of operations. It should be worth mentioning that if you choose the Y-Wing squadron, the party gets a number of Y-Wings equal to half the number of PCs in the group rounded up. With Force and Destiny, you and your fellow players will choose a group resource that you'll all have to share. The three to choose from are a Jedi Holocron, a Starship, or a Mentor. If you choose the Jedi Holocron, then that Holocron comes with a couple of skills that become career skills to all PCs in the group. The game uses its own dice system called the narrative dice. Each dice are different colored, and many have different symbols. I remember this was a point of contention when this game first came out, but now you actually really don't need the physical dice. There's actually a free app that allows you to roll all the dice on whatever device you happen to own. There are 6 different symbols. The bullet hole looking things are successes. These are good and generally tell you if you succeed. The opposite of that are the triangles, which are failures. The Jedi symbol without the lightsaber is an advantage. They do not grant successes, but can give a positive variety to your successes and even to your failures. The Imperial-looking symbol are threats. These are the opposite of advantages and can fuel negative consequences or side effects to your successes and failures. The lightsaber symbol is a triumph. This is a very powerful result. It counts as one success and can be used to trigger powerful abilities and circumstances. The opposite is the despair. They indicate a significant bane or detrimental outcome, even on successes. The blue d6s are called boost dice. Whenever you are granted a special advantage, such as aiming or having high ground in a perception check, you may be asked to roll one or more of these. They use successes and advantages. The opposite is the black setback die. Whenever you have some sort of a disadvantage, such as poor vision or insufficient resources, you'll be rolling one or more of these. The setback die makes use of the failure and threat symbols. One of the main dice you'll be using are the green d8s, or the ability dice. This represents your character's aptitude or skill when making a skill check. The ability dice make use of the success and advantage symbols, sometimes in pairs. The opposite is the purple d8 called the difficulty dice. This determines how difficult a task is for your character. The difficulty dice makes use of the failure and threat symbols, sometimes in pairs. The yellow d12 dice are called proficiency dice. This represents innate ability and training. If your character has ranks in a skill, chances are they will be rolling one or more of these. The proficiency dice makes use of the success, advantage, and triumph symbol, often in pairs. The opposite is the red challenge dice. This represents extreme adversity and opposition. If something is particularly difficult, or the GM spends a destiny point to upgrade their roll, you'll have to add one or more of these into your dice pool. The challenge dice make use of the failure, threat, and despair symbol, often in pairs. Last but not least is the force dice, most commonly used for force users who are, using the force. There are 2 symbols, light side and dark side pips, although most of the faces represent the dark side. The game makes use of 6 characteristics. We have brawn, agility, cunning, intellect, willpower, and presence. Brawn represents a blend of a character's brute power, strength, and overall toughness. Agility measures a character's manual dexterity, hand-eye coordination, and body control. Cunning reflects how crafty, devious, clever, and creative a character can be. Intellect measures a character's intelligence, education, mental acuity, and ability to reason and rationalize. Willpower reflects a character's discipline, self-control, mental fortitude, and faith. And presence is the measure of a character's moxie, charisma, confidence, and force of personality. There are a plethora of skills, and they are separated into 3 categories. We have general skills, combat skills, and knowledge skills. Astrogation represents a character's ability to use their knowledge of the galaxy to most effectively program the hyperspace coordinates for any jump. Athletics serves as a measure of the character's overall fitness and physical conditioning. Charm is when a character attempts to persuade an individual through flattery, flirting, and grace. Coercion is when a character issues a threat. Computers is the catch-all skill for when a character wants to exploit computer systems, whether it's through slicing, repairing computer systems, defending against other slicers, or routine maintenance. Cool is one of the initiative skills, but it's also when a character is emotionally centered and doesn't give away their tell. Coordination can mean flexibility or a sense of balance. Deception is the lying skill. Discipline may allow characters to overcome treachery and threats and also fear. Discipline can also be used in some force powers. Leadership is a combination of being able to make smart decisions, being firm and decisive when doing so, and instilling a sense of loyalty and respect in one's subordinates. Mechanics can mean the repair of machinery, including droids, but it can also allow you to mod weapons and armor. Medicine can be used to heal another character's wounds, including critical injuries. You can use this skill on yourself if you have the right tools, but you will take some heavy penalties. Negotiation is exactly what it sounds like. You're negotiating for something you want, most likely to bring down the cost of said thing. Perception is a character state of awareness. Piloting comes in two different varieties. You have planetary, which involves speeders and other land vehicles or even riding beasts, and space, which involves starships. Resilience represents a character's physical fortitude, including threats of all sorts, such as poisons or extreme weather. Skullduggery encompasses a broad range of skills that are crucial to performing criminal actions, such as picking pockets, disguising oneself, and breaking locks. Stealth is exactly that. You're trying to hide from something or someone. Streetwise is kind of a weird one. It's basically the ability to find something in an urban setting, such as a shop or a person. Survival is surviving out in the wilderness, tracking or taming wild animals. Vigilance is the other initiative skill for when you are caught unawares. Brawl is fighting with fists. Gunnery is shooting large weapons, usually too heavy to carry, such as vehicle-mounted weapons. Melee is attacking with some sort of a melee weapon, but not a lightsaber. Ranged weapons come in two different varieties: heavy, which encompasses weapons bulky enough to be used with two hands, and light, which are one-handed weapons. Core roles is the knowledge of core worlds, including planets and culture. Education is basic knowledge and understanding of anything that doesn't fall under any of the other knowledge skills. Lore is the knowledge of long-lost cultures and ancient legends. Outer Rim is the knowledge of the independent worlds on the Outer Rim, including planets and culture. Underworld is the knowledge of the criminal underworld, how it works and who's who. Xenology is the knowledge of motivations, biological origins, and philosophies of the galaxy's varied species. Let's say you're asked to make a skill roll. You need to assemble your dice for the dice pool. All rolls are player-facing. That means players roll both positive dice, such as boost, ability, and proficiency dice, and negative dice, such as setback, difficulty, and challenge dice. In order to create a dice pool for our particular skill check, look at your ranks for the skill and the characteristic tied to it. Whichever one has the largest number will determine how many ability dice you will roll. Those are the green dice, by the way. The lowest number is how many of those green dice will be upgraded to yellow. For example, if I'm trying to do an athletic skill check and my athletic skill is at a rank 4, but my brawn is at rank 3, I would take 4 ability dice to start with. Take 3 of those and convert them to proficiency dice, or the yellow ones. So that means I would have 3 yellow dice and 1 green dice to roll. Next, my GM would tell me the difficulty of the task. Easy tasks are 1 difficulty dice, average are 2, hard are 3, daunting are 4, and formidable are 5. Let's say that in my previous example, my GM is giving me an average check. I'll take 2 difficulty dice and add them to my 3 proficiency dice and my 1 ability dice. If there are any other factors, I could convert those to either setback dice or boost dice. Maybe I have some sort of gear that can give me a boost die for this roll, or maybe the terrain is difficult and that adds a setback die. I'll roll all the dice together. Failures will cancel out any successes you have, and threats will cancel any advantages you have. Triumphs and despairs do not cancel each other out, and you can have both at the same time. You can even succeed on a skill test and have a despair, and vice versa. Those are always fun, by the way. Next, you count up the remaining successes and advantages, if any. Remember, triumphs add a success and despairs add a failure. If you have at least 1 success, you succeed. If not, you fail. Even if your successes and failures cancel each other out and you have nothing left, you still fail. Calculate any advantages or threats that are left over, and then resolve any triumphs or despairs. Remember, advantages can add benefits to a situation even if the check was a failure, and threats add complications or disadvantages. Likewise, triumphs add an overwhelming benefit in some way, and despairs add a dire complication or disadvantage. There is one last thing you can do even before you begin assembling your dice pool. You can spend a destiny point. Before every session, each player rolls a single force die, even if their character is not force sensitive. The GM will tally all the dark side and light side points. Players get the light side points, and the GM keeps the dark side points. These points can be spent to change the narrative in some way. Maybe you have that one thing you thought you left on the ship, or maybe there's a side door in this corridor that will allow you to hide from the pursuing stormtroopers. Destiny points can also be used to upgrade a skill check once. This means you convert one of your ability dice into a proficiency dice, or add another ability die if you only have proficiency dice in the pool. Whenever you spend a destiny point, you flip one of those light side points to the dark side points, and vice versa. There must always be balance. Likewise, the GM can spend a dark side point to upgrade one of the difficulty dice into a challenge dice, or create a certain complication that must be overcome. The going will get tough, and when it does, it's time for combat. Characters will use one of two skills for initiative: vigilance for when your characters are surprised, or cool when they see it coming. This is a simple roll, meaning that there are no difficulty dice to be rolled. Initiative is sorted into initiative slots, either PCs or NPCs. Any of the PCs can go on an initiative slot, and the GM can activate any NPC on an NPC initiative slot. On a turn, characters can take any number of incidental actions, within reason of course, one maneuver, and one action. Incidentals can be things such as speaking to another character, dropping an item, releasing someone, or any other minor movement things such as shifting position, peeking around a corner, or looking behind a person. A maneuver is an activity that isn't complex and can include aiming, moving, opening a door, diving behind cover, and standing up. Distance is divided into range bands, so engaged, short, medium, long, and extreme. A character can move within a range band or move from short range to medium range. It takes 2 movements to move from medium range to long range though. A character can also perform one primary action, such as drop prone or stand up from prone, which I kind of wonder why they bother saying standing up is an incidental. You can exchange an action or a maneuver, activate an ability or force power, perform a skill check, and perform a combat check. To attack, a character selects a target and makes note of the range for the dice pool. If a character is within engaged range, the difficulty is easy plus any modifiers depending on the weapon used. Ranged light adds another difficulty die, and ranged heavy adds 2. If you're attacking with a melee weapon or with brawl, the difficulty will be average. If attacking at short range, the difficulty is easy. Medium is average, long is hard, and extreme is daunting. If you are shooting outside of the weapon's range, then you're going to be upgrading the roll by each range band outside it. If the defending character has a defense rating, usually through armor, then setback dice are added to the dice pool. Roll the dice and count the number of successes, if any. If you succeed, take the weapon's base damage and add the number of extra successes to the damage. The defender subtracts that damage from their soak value and adds wounds equal to what's left. If the attacker accrued advantages, then they can be used for additional benefits, such as passing a boost die to another character, healing strain, or dealing critical injuries. If you're at max wounds, then you are incapacitated and you get a critical injury. Roll a d100 and consult the table. If you have more than one critical injury, like from a previous conflict that hasn't been healed up yet, then you add 10 to the roll. Likewise, if a weapon has the vicious quality, then you add to that number 2. Vicious 1 means you add 10, vicious 2 you add 20, etc., etc. You can heal critical injuries by making a medicine check once per week per critical injury with a difficulty equal to the severity of the critical injury. When combat is finished, it's time to lick your wounds and recover any strain you have. Naturally, a character recovers 1 wound per day. You can also recover some damage if someone performs a medicine roll on you with a difficulty equal to the stage of your character's health. If your current wounds equal half or less of your wound threshold, the difficulty is easy. If equal to more than half of your wound threshold, then the difficulty is average. If current wounds exceed your wound threshold, the difficulty is hard. After an encounter, characters can attempt to recover strain by making a simple, that means no difficulty dice, discipline or cool check. Each success grants 1 point of recovery. The Force is a mysterious part of the galaxy. It is always in flux between the light side and the dark side. If a character has a Force rating through a career or a specialization, then they have the option to purchase a Force power with experience points. This gives you access to the Force's basic power. Remember, some Force powers have a Force rating prerequisite above a Force rating of 1. In addition, a Force power has upgrades that can affect the aspects of that power, such as range, its duration, its strength, and control. Each power describes the check required to use that power, but they will require the use of the Force die. Most characters need to generate a light side Force pip to use a power. If a character generates a dark side pip, then the player can spend a destiny point and take a point of conflict to still use that Force power. Edge of the Empire has access to Force Sense, so the Force user can sense the Force interacting with the world around them. Influence, the character can attempt to guide, shape, and even twist the thoughts and feelings of others. And Force Move, the Force user can move small objects via the power of the Force. Age of Rebellion has access to Force Move. The Force user can move small objects via the power of the Force. Force Enhance, when making an athletics check, the Force user may roll an enhanced power check as part of the pool. And Foresee, the Force user can feel the Force flowing around everything, seeing what is and what will be. Force and Destiny has access to Battle Meditation. The Force user directs allies in battle, making them more effective as a coordinated unit, but it requires a Force rating of 2 or over. Bind, the Force user restrains an enemy, preventing the target from acting, also requires a Force rating of 2 or over. Enhance, when making an athletics check, the Force user may roll an enhanced power check as part of the pool. Foresee, the Force user can feel the Force flowing around everything, seeing what is and what will be. Heal and Harm, the Force user bolsters his ally with renewed vigor or saps his foe with vital energy. Influence, the character may attempt to guide, shape, and even twist the thoughts and feelings of others. Misdirect, the Force user creates illusions to fool those around them. Move, the Force user can move small objects via the power of the Force. Protect and Unleash, the Force user guides the flow of energy, protecting himself and others, or unleashing blasts of power upon his foe. That one requires a Force rating of 3 or over. Seek, the Force user allows the will of the Force to lead the way to something lost or forgotten. And Sense, the Force user can sense the Force interacting with the world around them. Adversaries come in 3 different levels: Minions, Rivals, and Nemesis. Minions are groups of mooks that tie their stats together to make them somewhat formidable. Minions do not have a strain threshold, and if they take strain damage, it is converted to wound damage instead. Critical injuries will downright eliminate a group of minions. Rivals have better stats than minions and can suffer critical injuries, but they still cannot suffer strain. Nemesis work just like PCs. They have even better stats than rivals, can suffer critical injuries, and have a strain threshold. Edge of the Empire has access to adversaries within the galactic underworld, so Aqualish Thug, Arms Dealer, Barabel Enforcer, Defil Assassin, Forger, Infochant, Loan Shark, Pirate Crew, Pirate Captain, Slaver, Shipjacker, Slicer, Smuggler Baron, Smuggler, Street Tough, Salustan Pilot for Hire, Swoop Ganger, and Twi'lek Black Marketeer. Spaceport Personnel, so your basic security guards and things like that. Some bounty hunters, such as an apprentice hunter, a journeyman hunter, and a master hunter. Forces of Law and Order, these are going to be your police type people. Also some corporate or your Imperial Moths, things like that. Stormtroopers will fit under this category as well. Patrons and clients, so you have things like your Hutt crime lords in this category. Core worlders, so your average people, your nobles, your senators, and droids. So we have the antiquated battle droid, an assassin droid, an astromech droid, maintenance droid, medical droid, protocol droid, and security droid. And then galactic oddities and fringe worlders. So these are going to be like your odds and ends, like your Jedi, a Gamorrean thug, a Mynock, Twi'lek Dancer, Wookiee Gladiator, Captive Rancor, a Gundark. Age of Rebellion has access to adversaries within the Rebel Alliance, such as an Alliance Infantry, a Diplomat, a Bothan Spy, a Commander, Incom Engineer, Mechanics, basically anything that you're going to need for your Rebel cell if you're playing in that type of a game. You'll have access to the Galactic Empire. You'll have an Imperial Advisor, an Imperial Moff. You also have your military type adversaries. These will be where your varieties of stormtroopers are. You have your galactic underworld, so Black Marketeer, Hired Thugs, Hutt Crime Lords, Infochant, your varieties of pirates, and your droids. So you have things like the Assassin Droid, Astromech, Maintenance Droid, Medical Droid, and the Protocol Droid, and your Core World denizens. So this will be your everyday average people, politicians, senators, nobles, things like that. And then you have your fringe dwellers and galactic oddities, so like a cyborg administrator, a Gundark, a Jedi in hiding, a Nerf herder of all things. And then Force and Destiny has access to adversaries including Wormworlder, so these are going to be like Big Game Hunter, Hyperlane Scout, Bith Musician, Pod Racer Pilots, Gan Findsman, a Toydarian Merchant, that's always a fun one, Ugnaught Mechanic. You'll have things like Galactic Underworld, so you have Con Artists, Bounty Hunters, Hutt Slave Dealers, Spice Pushers, Street Toughs, Imperial Forces, so Imperial Assassins, Dungeoneers, the Royal Guard, Stormtroopers, Pilots. You get access to droids like the Analysis Droid, the Magna Guard, the Interrogation Droid, Medical Droid, Protocol Droid, Viper Prode Droid. And then you get some Force users like an Accomplished Mechanic, a Cautious Smuggler, kind of like your normal everyday ne'er-do-wells, but with a hint of the Force tied to them. And then you've got creatures like the Stalking Acolyte, the Jacobese, the Jubba Bird, the Kateen, the Kuhun, the Malra, the Mature Tusk Cat, the Vornsker, the Islamir, which kind of funny that they're in this book. I kind of forgot about that. And then you've got the galactic oddities like the Basilisk Adventurer, the Chiss Mercenary, Mustafarian Miner. Force and Destiny also has access to the Inquisitorias, but you'll have to create them yourselves. It is made easier with a skills package to choose from, talents, abilities, and force powers and equipment. You just choose whichever one you want and apply the package to your character. You're going to need all manner of gear to survive out in a war-torn galaxy. Luckily, there's all sorts of gear to use. Each piece of equipment has a rarity tied to it. This is how difficult it is to find out there in a shop. If you want to attempt to find a piece of gear, make a negotiation check based on the item's rarity. So on a rarity of 0 or 1, it's a simple check. Rarity 2 and 3 is going to be an easy check. 4 and 5 is an average check. 6 and 7 is a hard check. 8 and 9 is a daunting check. And then 10 is a formidable. Black market items require a streetwise check instead. Depending on what world you're attempting to go shopping on, your negotiation or streetwise check can also be modified. Pieces of gear may also have item qualities tied to them. Active qualities require 2 advantage in order to trigger them. Accurate adds a boost die to the attack dice pool. With autofire, you declare that you are using it to upgrade the difficulty of attacking, but if you get 2 advantages and spend it, you deal the weapon's base damage plus the number of successes again to the same target or to a target within the weapon's max range. Breach allows a weapon to ignore 1 point of armor or 10 points of soak. Burn allows the weapon to deal the weapon's base damage to a number of rounds equal to the weapon's burn rating. Blast allows a weapon to explode and deal its blast damage to an opponent engaged with the original target. Concussive allows the weapon to stagger a target for a number of rounds equal to the weapon's concussive rating. Cortosis grants weapon immunity to Sunder or makes armor immune to Pierce and Breach. Cumbersome weapons are large or awkward. A character needs a bronze score equal to or greater than the weapon's cumbersome rating. Defensive adds a point of melee defense to the user wielding it. Deflection adds a point of ranged defense to the wielder using it. Disorient adds a setback dice for a number of rounds equal to the weapon's disorient rating. Ensnare binds an opponent, who must make a hard athletics check to break free. Guided requires 3 advantages and when triggered allows you to make a different roll using the weapon's guidance system to attempt to hit the target again. Knockdown knocks the target prone. Inaccurate imposes a setback die to the attacker's dice pool. Inferior generates an automatic threat to all checks using the weapon. Ion affects electrical systems, such as droids and ships, and deals damage to strain. Limited ammo means you only have that much ammo to use. Linked weapons allow you to deal damage to an opponent again. Pierce ignores a point of soak for each rank of Pierce. Weapons with Prepare require some time to set up. Slow firing weapons require a round per rank of slow firing before it can be fired again. Weapons with Stun can inflict strain onto a target. Stun damage is the same as stun, only these weapons can switch back and forth between lethal damage and stun damage. Sunder allows a weapon to deal damage to a piece of gear. Superior generates an automatic advantage. Tractor emits a tractor beam that ensnares a ship. And Vicious adds plus 10 to critical injuries per rank of Vicious. Each weapon has a characteristic. There's the skill that's used for making attacks with it, how much damage it deals, aside from extra successes, the range of a weapon that can be used at. If a ranged weapon is fired at beyond its max range, remember the difficulty is upgraded. A critical rating for a weapon indicates the number of advantages required to trigger a critical injury. Encumbrance is how heavy a weapon is. Hardpoints are how many mods or attachments a piece of gear can have. And special are any of the item qualities as described before. A piece of gear may end up damaged through sundering or through the use of a despair. For minor damage, you add one setback die to any roll that you use with it. To repair it is an easy difficulty. Moderate, you're going to add an additional difficulty die. And to repair that is going to be an average mechanics check. And major means that it's now unusable. And the difficulty rating to repair that is at hard. Edge of the Empire has your standard fare. So we're going to have things like the holdout blaster, your different varieties of actual blaster pistols and blaster rifles. Edge of the Empire does have the bowcaster, which is extra, but it also has the ionization blaster. And then the 2 disruptor weapons. We have 2 slug throwers, a bola net, and then we get the flame projector, missile tube, frag grenade, stun grenade, and thermal detonators. Those are actually standard as well. For melee weapons in Edge of the Empire, we're going to have your standard brass knuckles and shot gloves, but we're also going to have a combat knife, the force pike, lightsaber, truncheon, vibro axe, vibro knife, and vibro swords. Those are going to be standard for all the core rulebooks. In terms of armor in Edge of the Empire, we do have your standard affairs. So we're going to have things like armored clothing, the adverse environment gear, heavy battle armor, heavy clothing, laminate armor. We have a personal deflector shield and padded armor. The main focus for these are going to be the amount of soak that they provide, but also some of them give a actual defense value. Some of them also have extra hard points, and some of them are going to be heavier than others. So the 3 core rulebooks have a variety of gear and equipment to choose from, but some sets are standard between all 3 books, such as the communications, some of the items in poisons, and the medical. Cybernetics is pretty standard all throughout, as well as some of the security, survival, and tool gears. In addition to that, Edge of the Empire has some detection devices such as the electrobinoculars, the general purpose scanner, the hand scanner, the macro binoculars, the scanner goggles, and the surveillance tagger. It also has a med pack, a stim pack, and synth skin. We also get some recreational or entertainment things such as chance cubes, Tajaric table, and a sabak deck. And then we've got some security things like a comm jammer and comm scrambler, a disguise kit, restraining bolt, slicer gear. For survival gear, we have things like the crash survival kit, ration pack, a breath mask, a space suit, tent, and thermal cloak. And then your general tools will include backpack, climbing gear, data pad, emergency repair patch, extra reloads, fusion lantern, glow rod, jetpack, toolkit, and utility belt. In terms of weapons for Age of Rebellion, we do have the standard affair as well. So we are going to have things like the holdout blaster, the different blaster pistols in light and heavy form, the blaster rifles, the ion blaster, and the disruptor weapons. We also get 2 slug thrower weapons as well, and we have access to the flame projector, the missile tube, the frag grenade. The armor piercing grenade is pretty new, as well as the anti-vehicle mine and the anti-personnel mine. But we also get stun grenades and thermal detonator as well. For the Age of Rebellion melee weapons, we're going to have your standard affair here as well, with the brass knuckles and the shot gloves, combat knife, force pike, lightsaber, truncheon, vibro axe, vibro knife, and vibro sword. Pretty much the same thing as in Edge of the Empire. In terms of Age of the Empire and its armor selection, we have the standard affair here. So we're going to have things like the adverse environment gear, armored clothing, heavy battle armor, heavy clothing, laminate armor, a personal deflector shield, and padded armor. The main takeaway from this one is that some of them are going to provide more hard points than others, a variety of different encumbrance, and different soak values. And some of them also give a defense value as well. In terms of gear and equipment for Age of Rebellion, we're going to have the standard affair here as well. So we're going to have the communications equipment will be the same. So you're going to have handheld and long-range comlinks with as well as a hollow messenger. We'll have the drugs and poisons, the cybernetic enhancements and replacements. Although something that's pretty new are the immune implant and implant armor. We'll have the same set of gear for scanning and surveillance, so electrobinoculars, general purpose scanner, hand scanner, macro binoculars, scanner goggles, and surveillance tagger. The same affair for the medical equipment, so Bacta and tank and leaders, emergency med packs, regular med packs, stim packs, synth skin, and synth flesh. We'll have some of the same survival gear, such as breath mask or respirator, a crash survival kit, a field ration packs, space suit, tent, thermal cloak, and some of the same tools and electronics such as a climbing gear, data pad, emergency repair patch, extra reload, fusion cutter, fusion lantern, glow rod, military field manual, and toolkit. We also get backpacks and load bearing gear as well as a utility belt. Something that's a little bit new in the Age of Rebellion core rulebook though is the infiltration and espionage equipment. So we get things like the advanced flesh camouflage kit, binders, Black Ops data breaker, comm jammer, comm scrambler, disguise kit, electronic lock breaker, personal stealth field, restraining bolt, and slicer gear. Although some of these pieces of gear are shared with in Edge of the Empire as well. Force and Destiny is going to have the least amount of ranged weapons, but it does kind of make up for that later on when we get into the melee and the lightsabers. For ranged weapons, we have the standard affair with the different varieties of blaster pistols and a blaster carbine and a blaster rifle. No heavy blaster rifles here or disruptor rifles. We do have the 2 slug thrower weapons in the pistol and rifle variety, and we have the standard explosives such as the missile tube, frag grenade, stun grenade, and the thermal detonator. For Force and Destiny, we do have more variety of melee weapons, but you're still going to have your standard affair like the brass knuckles and the shot gloves. But this time we also get the Cortosis gauntlets. We also get access to the Ancient Sword, a Cortosis shield, a Cortosis staff, and a Cortosis sword. Also an Electro staff, as well as your vibro weaponry in all of its varieties. In addition to your standard melee weapons, Force and Destiny has a variety of lightsabers to use. So we still have the basic lightsaber, but we also have the double-bladed lightsaber, the lightsaber pike, the Shoto, and the training lightsaber. In terms of armor for Force and Destiny, we're going to have the standard affair here. So we're going to have things like the adverse environment gear, armored clothing, the heavy clothing, and the padded armor, but this time we're adding a variety of robes, such as the armored robes and the concealing robes. The main takeaway from this one is that the hard points are going to be very few in number here. The encumbrance is going to be pretty low, and the soak values are going to be about low as well, but you're still getting a soak value from each of these. Only 2, the armored clothing and the armored robes, are going to provide a defense value. Force and Destiny probably has the least amount of variety in gear and equipment compared to the other 2 books, but we still get your standard affairs such as the communications equipment, which has the comlinks in handheld and long-range variety. We've got some drugs and poisons, the cybernetic enhancements and replacements, some scanning and surveillance equipment that will include electrobinoculars, macro binoculars, general purpose scanner, hand scanner, and scanner goggles. We've got medical equipment, which goes up to the emergency med pack. Regular med packs are actually not included here, but we do get stim packs, synth skin or synth flesh, and a physician's kit. We've also got some security equipment such as binders, disguise kit, electronic lock breaker, and restraining bolt, as well as some survival gear such as the breath mask or respirator, the field ration pack, spacesuit, tent, thermal cloak, wilderness survival kit, and your tools and electronics such as backpack, climbing gear, data pad, extra reload, fusion lantern, glow rod, toolkit, and utility belt. Weapons and armor can be modified. Attachments are pieces of extra gear that are attached to another piece of gear. A mod is an additional modification that a mechanic can make to the attachment to further improve the gear's performance. To install a mod, make a hard mechanics check. If you succeed, the mod is installed. Each additional mod installed upgrades the difficulty and costs an additional 100 credits beyond the base cost. In addition to normal weapons and armor mods, Force and Destiny has access to Kyber crystals for lightsabers. And just like with regular attachments, these have mods that will change some stats as well, or even give item qualities to your lightsaber. You are no doubt going to be flying around the galaxy in your fancy ship. Your ship does have characteristics of its own. Handling is the measure of a ship or vehicle's agility and how well it responds to the pilot. In game terms, this stat dictates the number of boost or setback dice whenever piloting checks are required. Speed is a ship or vehicle's raw speed and how quickly it accelerates. Silhouette is an abstract of the general size of the vehicle. The defense of a ship is its shields. This gives a setback dice to any ships or vehicles that attack it. Armor is similar to a person's soak and prevents damage from coming through. Hull trauma threshold is equivalent to a character's wound threshold. This is pretty much the HP of the ship. Likewise, system strain threshold is equivalent to a character's strain threshold. Each vehicle and ship has hard points available. These are customization points for mods. Combat works similar to person-to-person combat. First, you're going to determine initiative with either a cool or a vigilance check. Then you'll assign initiative slots, and then participants take turns. Maneuvers are a bit different in ship and vehicle combat. Ships and vehicles can accelerate and decelerate, which can change the difficulty of piloting checks or make certain maneuvers possible. Fly and drive, depending on the speed of the craft, can determine how many maneuvers it will take to move between range bands. Evasive maneuvers can only be taken at a speed of 3+ and upgrades the difficulty for all checks against the ships once, but also upgrades attacks this ship makes. Stay on target can only be taken at speed of 3+ and upgrades a pilot's ability dice to attack, but also does the same to any ships trying to attack it. Punch it allows the ship to immediately go to max speed, but at the expense of 1 system strain for every point of speed gained. And angle deflector shields, which allows you to move a single point of shield to a different part of the ship, such as aft, bow, starboard, or port. A ship can perform a variety of actions. Damage control is a character tries to mitigate system strain and hull trauma by making a mechanics check with a difficulty equal to the amount of strain or damage. If it's less than half, the difficulty is easy. If it's more than half, it's average. If it's at max or exceeds max, it is hard. It should be noted that a character can use damage control as many times to reduce system strain, but can only use it once for hull trauma. Gain the advantage can only be taken at speed 4+. After a piloting check based on the speed of the craft, if successful, the pilot ignores all penalties imposed by their own and the opponent's use of evasive maneuvers until the end of the following round. The pilot also gets to choose which defense zone to hit with an attack. And then we have perform a combat check with vehicle weapons. And this works just as it does in person-to-person combat, only the size of the ship or vehicle is taken into consideration. So if the firing vessel has the same silhouette as the target, or the silhouette is 1 larger or smaller than the target, then the difficulty is average. If the firing vessel has a silhouette 2 or more points smaller than the target, then the difficulty is easy. If the firing vessel has a silhouette 2 points larger than the target ship, then the difficulty is hard. If the firing vessel has a silhouette 3 points larger than the target ship, then the difficulty is daunting. And if the firing vessel has a silhouette 4 or more points larger than the target ship, then the difficulty is formidable. Interstellar travel is just as much a part of Star Wars as ship-to-ship combat is, and when you need to travel from system to system, there are a few things to be aware of. Astrogation checks should be used when there is a possibility for a complication, such as traveling to a new uncharted system or in the middle of combat. And there are some modifiers that go along with that. So if the ship is damaged or missing an astromech droid or navicomputer, then you're going to increase the difficulty by 3. If you need to make quick calculations or entry into hyperspace under duress, typically while escaping from pursuit, you'll increase the difficulty by 1. If the ship is lightly damaged, increase it by 1. If the ship is heavily damaged, increase it by 2. If there are outdated, corrupt, or counterfeit navigation charts or navicomputer data, then you'll increase the difficulty by 1. Vehicles are separated into 4 categories, or at least in Edge of the Empire and Force and Destiny. And they are air speeders, land speeders, wheeled vehicles, and walkers. And it should be worth mentioning that the variety of vehicles between the three core rulebooks are very much different. There's very few, if any, vehicles that are going to be standard here. In terms of speeders, Edge of the Empire has the Airspeeder, a Cloud Car, the Skyhopper, and the Encom T-47 Airspeeder. For the land speeders, we have the Aerotech Military Speeder Bike, the Flare S Swoop, a speeder truck, and then an X-34 land speeder. For the wheeled and tracked vehicles, we have the Corellian Minor Corporation Digger Crawler and the Personal Carrier. And for Walker, we have the All-Terrain Personal Transport and the Exploration and Survey Walker. For speeders in Age of Rebellion, we have the Cloud Car and we have the Alliance T-47 Airspeeder, as well as the Speeder Bike. For Walkers, we have the All-Terrain Armored Transport and the All-Terrain Scout Transport. For Force and Destiny, under Airspeeders, we have the Civilian Airspeeder and the Cloud Car. Surprisingly, the Civilian Airspeeder in this book is almost the same as the Airspeeder in Edge of the Empire, which in the description says it's a civilian model, but the maximum altitude is substantially different. For land speeders, we have the Passenger Land Speeder, the Dre Light Speeder Truck, and then the Odyssey Heavy Speeder Bike. For wheeled and tracked vehicles, we have the Gallus Tech 48 Roller and the Ground Car. And for walkers, we just have the AT-HCT. Starships come in three different profiles if you're looking at Edge of the Empire and Force and Destiny. They are starfighters and patrol boats, freighters and transports, and then capital ships. Age of Rebellion has different distinctions, and they are starfighters and shuttles, gunships, cruisers, and battleships. In Edge of the Empire, under starfighters and patrol boats, we have things like the Cloak-Shaped Fighter, the Fire Spray System Patrol Craft, the Jump Master Long Range Scout, the Lambda-class T-4A Long Range Shuttle, the TIE Starfighter, the Y-Wing Attack Starfighter, the Headhunter, and the Ship-Ray Blast Boat. For freighters and transport in Edge of the Empire, we have things like the Action 6 Bulk Transport, the Citadel-class Light Freighter, the Medium Transport, the Sorosub Luxury Space Yacht, the Space Master Medium Transport, Starwind Pleasure Yacht, the Wayfarer-class Medium Freighter, the YT-1300 Light Freighter, the YT-2400 Light Freighter, and the Star Galleon Armed Transport. For capital ships, we have things like the CR-90 Corvette, the DP-20 Gunship, the Marauder-class Assault Corvette, and the Nebulon B Escort Frigate. For Age of Rebellion under starfighters and shuttles, we have things like the RZ-1 A-Wing Light Interceptor, the X-Wing model, the Y-Wing model, the B-Wing model, the TIE Starfighter, the TIE Interceptor, the TIE Defender, the TIE Tactical Bomber, and the Lambda-class T-4A Long Range Shuttle, as well as the Sentinel-class Landing Craft. For gunships, we have the Vigil-class Corvette, the CR-90 Corvette, and the YV-929 Armed Transport. For cruisers, we have things like the Consular-class Light Assault Cruiser, the Gozanti-class Armed Transport, the Lancer-class Frigate, the Nebulon B Frigate, the Dreadnought-class Heavy Cruiser, the Vindicator-class Heavy Cruiser, and the Interdictor-class Heavy Cruiser. For battleships, we have the Imperial 1 class Star Destroyer, the Praetor 2 class Star Battle Cruiser, the Victory class Star Destroyer, and the MC-80 Liberty type Star Cruiser. For starfighters and patrol boats in Force and Destiny, we have things like the BTL-A4 BTL-S3 Y-Wing Attack Starfighter, the Delta 6 System Defense Starfighter, the Delta 7 Aether Sprite Interceptor, the Delta 12 Sky Sprite, the Lambda-class Long Range Shuttle, the Pathfinder Scout Ship, the X-Wing, and the TIE Starfighter. For freighters and transports, we have things like the G9 Rigger Light Freighter, the HWK-290 Light Freighter, the HT-2200 Medium Freighter, the Simiar Light Freighter, and the Questor Light Freighter. For capital ships, we have the ADZ class Destroyer, the CR-90 Corvette, the IR-3F class Light Frigate, and the Victory class Star Destroyer. The galaxy is separated into 8 regions. We have the core worlds, the colonies, the inner rim, the expansion region, the mid-rim, the outer rim, wild space, and the unknown regions. Hyperspace lanes make traveling easier and are marked on the map, although it can be pretty difficult to find a specific planet you're looking for. Each of the different core rulebooks have their own set of planets that they detail out. Each planet profile tells you where it is in the galaxy, what kind of a government it has, and the general population of peoples that live there, what languages are spoken, and the type of terrain, as well as any major cities or areas of interest and what their trades are. Also gives a nice background for things that have happened in the past on that planet. For Edge of the Empire, we have planets such as Bespin, Corellia, Fondor, Kessel, Nalhutta, Ord Mantell, Ryloth, and Tatooine. For the Age of Rebellion, we have planets like Alderaan, although it's been blown up, Bis, Chandrila, Dak or Mon Calamari, Hoth, the Imperial Center or Coruscant, Solust, and Yavin 4. For the Force and Destiny planets, we have more planets that are in tune with the Force, such as Syria, Coruscant with the Jedi Temple, Dagobah, Doran, Elam, Moraband or Korriban, Ossus, and Week, which is actually a really interesting planet that has a medieval population that has been relatively left untouched by the galaxy, although there were remnants of the Clone Wars on there. Each of the 3 core rulebooks has their own starter adventure. For Edge of the Empire, it's called Trouble Brewing. The main plot of the adventure deals with the player characters coming to learn about the existence of Bandit Duba and the trouble he is causing for the ragtag community of smugglers and fringers who make a living on Formos. They also discover that he has a sizable bounty on his head. The first part of the adventure deals with describing the Formos spaceport and discussing some of the reasons the PCs might want to visit there. The adventure really begins when the PCs decide to visit the local cantina. On their way, they discover a battered droid wrecked beyond repair with only a few dwindling signs of functions left. He's able to tell the PCs that a friend of his has been abducted, apparently on the orders of a local smuggling boss. At the cantina, the PCs learn more about the smuggler, a violent Aqualish named Bandit Duba. They found out about the bounty on his head, and they may become entangled in a brawl. Whether the PCs intend it to or not, the brawl escalates into a violent confrontation with Darrow Blunt, a smuggler who works as part of a network connected to Duba. The PCs may find their way to Blunt's safe house, where they are able to recover the missing droid. Several clues lead the PCs into discovering Duba's whereabouts, and help from NPCs and the promise of reward should encourage the PCs to hunt him down. This leads to a confrontation on a large asteroid within the Kessel Run itself, and the PCs could further enrich themselves by recovering contraband. If the PCs refuse to bring the smuggler to justice, Duba nevertheless decides that they present a threat and come looking for them. Should the PCs prevail, all that remains to them is to collect a reward, which could lead to a tense encounter with agents of the Empire or an ambitious Hutt. I'm not a huge fan of this adventure, mainly because it assumes a lot of the PCs, mainly their curiosity to discover the damaged droid and them wanting to pursue this bounty. But it is an okay introductory adventure. It gives the PCs a place to have some encounters that aren't critical, and it gives them an introduction to combat without having major stakes. And it also has the Nemesis level adversary to serve as the final boss. I only wish that the final bit of exploration was more of a dungeon crawl or a base crawl where the PCs explore an underground base and not just wander around some tunnels until they come out to where they need to be. It's still a pretty nice adventure to the game that just doesn't really hold your hand. Each of the 3 core rulebooks has an introductory adventure. For Age of Rebellion, we have the Perlemian Haul. In this adventure, the PCs begin in media res, jumping out of hyperspace and approaching Martel Station, an Empire-governed orbital platform and the preeminent port of call for the Perlemian Haul. Once aboard the station, the PCs must gather information about the convoy and prepare to infiltrate it once it arrives. When the convoy appears in the Remduba system, the PCs have only a short amount of time to execute whatever plans they've formulated before the Imperial freighters complete their cargo transfer and enter hyperspace. Once aboard, they can be as direct or oblique as they like, though being stealthy certainly has its advantages. The Perlemian Haul's cargo, or rather that of one of its freighters, designated as M226, is undetermined, allowing the GM to make its contents relevant to the party's duties. This adventure leaves a lot open for the GM to customize, such as what is inside of M226 and how to go about finding and infiltrating. The PCs do have a contact on the inside that they can make use of with his own motivations for wanting to help the Alliance. Some of the ways the PCs can gain access to M226 is to utilize PASC, their contact on Martel Station, who can give them a couple Imperial Navy uniforms. They can use PASC's information to blackmail the Imperial Governor. They can seek out a work gang to get in close to the dock where M226 is located, or they can apply for a job with Martel Station's civilian ship hands and dock workers. Once at the dock, the PCs will need to sneak onto the ship, but because it is Imperial owned, there are many things that can go wrong. If they manage to make it on board, they will still need to clear out the interior so they can fly out of Martel Station. I actually really like this adventure because it gives players a clear goal right from the beginning. They have different options on how to approach it, and it doesn't really assume anything of the characters. The mission can be made personal if the contents of the cargo in M226 aligns with their duties. Each of the 3 core rulebooks have their own starting adventure. For Force and Destiny, it's called Lessons from the Past. Lessons from the Past is an adventure designed to present a group of novice Force users with a wider view of the powers they wield. Specifically, it sets the PCs on the path of constructing their own lightsabers and honing their Force abilities. It also can be used to establish them in opposition to the Empire and as the catalyst for future adventures. This adventure also ties directly into the Force and Destiny Game Master's kit. So if you can combine these 2 adventures, you have a better complete adventure. The first part of the adventure involves the PCs infiltrating a university that is now under control of the Empire. There is a checkpoint at the university itself, but it feels kind of shoehorned to provide a way for stormtroopers to just be there. The PCs will have to navigate around Imperial occupation to meet with their contact and investigate an artifact that will point them to the location of the Sanctuary, a wrecked ship in the Kolar system. The PCs will have to escape the university before setting out, but once they reach the Sanctuary, they discover that much of the ship is barely intact. Here, they'll have to search room by room in a sort of a linear dungeon crawl. The ship is ancient, and as such, there is an ancient war droid still patrolling the ship. The PCs will need to find a way to navigate around its patrol or just fight it, but it is a Nemesis level adversary. If the PCs should find the Jedi training room, they discover a Jedi holocron. And this is a very short adventure and can be used as a one-shot, although I will say it is very linear. There aren't a whole lot of options for the PCs, and even the layout of the ship is presented in a way that the characters move from room to room from top to bottom. Even the villain is rather lackluster, and his presence is very much non-existent. This is a very weak adventure in my opinion. Let me preface this by saying this is the game that got me back into role-playing just before the pandemic in 2019. For obvious reasons, my in-person group could not meet anymore, and once things started kicking off, I started playing online through Roll20. I like this game. It takes Star Wars, its themes and its core values, and it really makes you feel like you're the hero the galaxy needs. I love this system. The narrative dice system is the most intuitive system that I feel like I've played. It seamlessly melds mechanics and the narrative. You could roll an attack that ultimately fails, right? But then you could say, all right, so you shot your blaster, but it misses the stormtrooper by just an inch and manages to pierce the pipe right next to his face, blowing out steam, and now he's got a setback die to try to hit you on his next turn. The really awkward parts are when you actually succeed in a roll, but then you roll a despair, or vice versa, you fail, but then you roll a triumph. Those awkward moments make the game memorable though. It really gives you a sense of freedom to storycraft without becoming overbearing. There is a bit of power creep though, especially if you have a group that's been playing for a while, like years, and have accrued a ton of experience. The Force in some ways also seems very overpowered. I mean, like, move anyone? But I think that's the point. It's really in all how you use the Force, not that you should. Because remember, the Force can be this powerful and all mysterious. But if you're using it for, self-gain or for evil purposes, you're going to be a Sith before too long. And everybody's just going to hate your guts. The book itself can be very wordy and can be a chore to read at some times. So make sure you bookmark the materials that you need, like Healing on page 219 in the Edge of the Empire book. Yeah, I've got that one memorized because of how many times I've actually had to flip back there. And then there are some core mechanics that I just don't play with anymore, like obligation, duty, and morality. I actually have homebrewed my own morality system for my game because I don't just use one source anymore. I've actually combined them all, so it's a free-for-all for my players as well. And that's actually both a good thing and a bad thing. Each of the core rulebooks are functionally the same. If you want to play that military-style game, then Age of Rebellion is your way to go. Want to delve into the mysteries of the Force, then obviously Force and Destiny. And if you want to be a bounty hunter or a smuggler with a heart of gold, then Edge of the Empire. Or if you want some like awesome epic where you try to recreate the sequel trilogies in your own imagining, use all three. You totally can. There's nothing that prevents you to do so. I mean, I've even done something totally absurd like trying to do a Mass Effect Andromeda in the Star Wars mythos universe. The fun really only begins here. Each lineup has their own source books, era books, and equipment, gear books, books about specific systems, and then adventure books. And I'll be taking a look at all of that here. So feel free to leave a comment down below. Give this video a huge thumbs up to support this series. And I will see you guys in the next video.